I know what you're thinking. Is that a Ducati Multistrada 1200? No, it's the new Multistrada 950. So instead of the 1200cc engine in the bigger bike, this one has 937cc 11-degree Testastretta engine. It's the same lump that's in the Hypermoto 939, but in this bike it has a dedicated intake system and ECU. There's no reason to think it's any less of a Multistrada. It's still got a suite of electronics, a crisp and info-packed monochrome LCD dash display, Brembo brakes, fully adjustable suspension at each end, and styling shared with the bigger bikes. Unlike the 1200 Enduro, it's also got a 19-inch front wheel, albeit a cast alloy one. Ducati says this bike is a good blend of, these are my air quotes here, sporting Ducati values and comfort, and actually I'm pretty inclined to agree. So where to start? Well, the seat height is the lowest in the Multistrada range at 840mm. I'm 5'7" and I had to shuffle half an arse cheek of the seat to get a foot flat on the floor, but I didn't really mind that because the bike's really well balanced and has a wet weight of 229 kilos, and ultimately just found it really manageable. Its comfort and ergonomics are the same as the bigger bikes, and this is a Multistrada, so you should kind of have an idea of what you're getting, and that's comfy seat and a natural feeling riding position that is great whether you're cruising down the motorway or getting a shift on down a country road. It feels like it's really well suited to a wide range of riding applications. As I've said, the main difference between the 950 and the bigger 1200s is the engine. So the new 950 is the baby of the Multistrada family, and as such it's designed to be the most accessible bike to appeal to riders who want an all-rounder but don't really want the 160 horsepower of the Multistrada 1200 or the associated costs. Speaking of which, the Multistrada 950 is £10,995 in red, and you'll have to pay an additional £200 on top of that if you want it in white. That means the red bike is more than £2,000 cheaper than the standard Multistrada 1200 and £4,900 less than the top spec 1200S. And I bet you want to know what you get for that money. Well, not 160 horsepower of the 1200, predictably. Instead, this bike makes a much less intimidating 113 horsepower at 9,500 RPM and 71 pounds per foot of torque at 7,750 RPM, and it's all delivered smoothly and without threat. The engine's got kind of plenty of torquey mid-range grunt, and 80% of the available torque is delivered between 3,500 and 9,500 RPM, so it makes for a really flexible, versatile engine, and its character quickly became evident to me after just a short time in the saddle because it's really compliant and easily manageable in town, and as soon as you get onto a faster road and you want to press on, it's up for that too. It's just happy to do what you want. And I think that unless you absolutely positively won't settle for anything less than 160 horsepower at your greedy right hand, the 950 is likely to be quick enough. Alright, it's not 160 horsepower quick, but rip the throttle open and it will punch you forward with gusto, just without leaving you having to constantly rely on the electronics to help keep the front wheel down and the rear wheel in line. Ultimately, the bike's engine and power defines it in a really positive way because this is a bike that's easy to manage but unintimidating at the same time. But just because of that, Ducati haven't left off all the electronics. It's still got riding modes and ABS and traction control. So it's got 4 riding modes: Touring, Sport, Urban and Enduro, 8-stage traction control and ABS with 3 levels of adjustability. Switching between riding modes alters the ABS and traction control settings, changes the throttle map and the available power. So Touring, Sport both get full power, with Sport having the sharpest throttle map and least amount of electronic intrusion. Urban and Enduro modes both have softened throttle maps and power is cut to 75 horsepower, and Enduro mode also has no ABS at the rear wheel. Settings for the modes can all be customised to your liking, and the bike will actually remember them when you switch it on next. I favoured Sport mode, which has got a sharper but never jerky throttle response, and I left the traction on level 4, the ABS on level 1, and I never felt the electronics intruding actually. I think probably some of the credit for that is down to the Pirelli Scorpion Trail 2 tyres because they gripped Fuerteventura's abrasive but often dusty and occasionally gravelly roads without fail, with absolute consistency all day. They're really, really good. And on the subject of grip, handling and all that corner conquering stuff, let's talk suspension. There's a fully adjustable K-Arbor fork at the front and a fully adjustable Sachs monoshock at the rear. The rear shock was fine for me, but as standard I did find that the forks used up a lot of their travel when first getting on the brakes. So when we stopped to have a coffee, I got a man from Ducati to dial in 3 more clicks of compression damping and half a turn more preload. which made the front feel firmer and more supportive, but I think only after it had used up the first inch or two of its travel. I'm confident that with a bit more time to play around with the settings, I could get it more to my liking. However, I should say that the suspension worked really consistently all day. I got used to how it felt, and ultimately it didn't hamper my riding experience. One thing that wasn't too stable though was the rubber inserts that sit on top of the Enduro style foot pegs. One of mine fell out within about an hour of riding, and during the course of the day I noticed multiple bikes that either had one or both pieces of rubber missing as a result of them getting worked loose as riders move their feet around on the pegs. As they don't glue in, I think it looks like they just don't have a particularly solid fit into the pegs, which isn't great. And while I'm criticising, I thought that the brake and clutch levers looked a bit cheap. In fact, they were the only items that really gave me much of a hint that this bike is the cheapest in the Multistrada range. However, when it comes to the brakes themselves, I've got no complaints. The two front Brembo monoblock 4-piston calipers that did everything really well. They offered decent progressive power and good feel through the lever as they bit down on the 320mm semi-floating discs. The adjustable screen's also excellent. It's simple to adjust on the move to whatever height you want, and it's got a really smooth action. I found that at its highest setting, it came level with the top of my visor, and it did a really good job of keeping my body well shielded from the wind. So to sum up the new Multistrada 950, alright, it's not got the electronic skyhook suspension, IMU, or the same level of rider aids or the warp speed power of the Multistrada 1200S, but it is a more accessible proposition. Its power is less intimidating, it's also cheaper to buy, and it will undoubtedly be cheaper to run and insure. So I think that unless you really need all that technology and power, the new Multistrada 950 is going to be the all-rounder from Ducati that's going to suit most people most of the time.